The narrator begins by telling us about air tracks, allowing daredevils to make their own rules using high-speed rollerblades, with us giving off the feeling of flying. Ikki begins to rewind Mikan's tape, talking about ATEX, asking him so what's the big deal about them, but is then interrupted by a kick, this coming from Mikan, who sends him flying into the wall. She tells him off about watching her videos. Umi says that he has no manners and enjoys invading other people's privacy, whereas Rika tells Ikki that he should already know the rules by now in the house, with her being age 22, but sounding a lot older. Ikki asks them to warn him next time before they try to kill him, with him wondering internally, is this how he should be treated as the main character? Ringo asks Ikki if he lost the fight, and continues by saying that it's relieved that he didn't get hurt. Ikki yells, "Not yet," and runs out the house saying that he hasn't completely lost yet, leaving Ringo and the other members of the house to wonder if he's alright. Ikki walks through the streets, and he remembers his fight with the leader of the Skull Seders, Magaki Koji. The leader laughs at him, wondering if he's really the leader of the East Side Guns, calling him just a child. Ikki tries to fight Magaki, but is easily defeated by his superior fighting, plus the addition of his subordinates. Magaki knocks him through the wall of the building, and then jumps through the hole left by Ikki and grabs him, taking him up to a terrifying height, and then he tells Ikki, "You must understand what would have happened if you would just let him fall from this height," and sends Ikki falling to his death, only to catch him at the very last moment, where his head is nearly an inch away from the ground. Ikki is left in a state of shock and wets his pants in fear. Ikki's friends, Kazu and Onigiri, find him laying on the ground sometime later. His clothes are shredded and his body is covered in cuts. They tell him that the Skull Seders are the most dangerous Storm Riders group in the area. Ikki struggles to sit up, but Ikki stands up and walks away, doing so in shame. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ringo gets off her bike and looks at the sky. She sees some birds flocking over the building in a distance, claiming that it's easy to find Ikki. Ikki is sitting and watching the birds. She tells him to share about what happened to him from Kazu, about his opponent being a Storm Rider. Trying to cheer him up by nagging at him, he motions her to be quiet, and a mysterious pink-haired girl using ATs appears from a nearby alleyway. Ikki tells Ringo that the girl is always practicing around here, and he thinks that she looks like the girl from the A-Trek commercials. Ringo asks does he always come here to see her, to which Ikki replies it's nothing like that, well they're not even knowing that he's here. After sunset back at the Noyamano house, Ikki is left a tiny portion of food in comparison to his stepsisters. As punishment for looking at Mikan's videos, Ringo tries to give Ikki some of her meat, but is stopped by the others. Ikki looks like a gremlin, drooling, and when a piece of meat accidentally drops on the floor, he can't stop himself from going after it, lunging, sending the table flying, and all the food everywhere. He lands on a compromising position on top of Ringo, and the rest of the girls beat him senseless for spoiling their food. Later, Mikan finds herself always pissed off by his antics, with the girls visiting the public bathhouse. Ringo says that it's been a while since they've all bathed together, to which Mikan stares at her chest and says that she's gotten bigger, trying to sample her collection. Knowing to them, Ikki's at the vent outside the bath, trying to sneak a peek in retaliation for the whole day. However, he ends up walking back to his room, complaining about Mikan always being so mean to him, and before he enters his room, comes across a door within the house, with having many signs on the door saying, absolutely no trespassing. Curious by it, Ikki takes a look inside the door, and discovers that the Noyamano family has a collection of ATs and parts. With him knowing nothing about this, he picks up a pair, and several emblems drop out, inscribed with Sleeping Forest. Being the mischievous child he is, he decides to take a pair of the ATs and the emblem, but is sent speeding off by the motor. He learns how to speed up on the ATs, and he's almost sent plummeting to his death until he forcefully breaks himself against a barrier, yet he exclaims, "This is amazing." Back at the house, Mikan, Umi, and Ringo find that Ikki took a pair of Rika's ATs. Mikan explains that they'll be in trouble if Rika finds out about this. Ikki stands on top of the building, wondering how the pink-haired girl could ride the rails. He wonders if he should try and jump it, deciding that it's better he practice more before trying so. He then sees a swallow flying past him. He then hears the voice of a girl telling him to fly. He powers up his ATs and jumps onto the nearby railing, shouting, "Don't mess me. You think I would lose to a bird?" He then clumsily proceeds to jump his way through various buildings and rooftops, feeling as though wings are attached to his legs. However, he soon realizes that he doesn't know how to land yet, and the manual flies out of his hands. He somehow manages to survive it though, destroying several roof tiles in the process. Unable to properly control his ATs, Ikki crash lands beneath a stall selling AT parts. He's scared by the woman at the stall, who presumes that he's just a beginner, but this being because of his reaction. She continues by telling him that this shop is for where the top riders look for quality parts, and that her shop is not for little snot-nosed brats who pee their pants. Ikki yells back at her, saying that he's Babyface of the East Side Guns, and is not someone to mess with. She grabs his shirt, and he begins to beg for his life, asking her to please not eat him. She sees the emblem on his shirt, and assumes that he's the rookie of the Sleeping Forest, apologizing for her lack of manners, and tells the old man of the AT shop to take him to the meeting. The old man gets up and leaves, and the anime starts to play more electric dance music to fit the vibe. Ikki starts to chase after the man with his ATs, with the old man being much more experienced than he is. When he finally stops, Ikki is surprised to find himself in the middle of a park filled with AT users everywhere, with this being a Storm Rider meeting. Ikki sees the pink-haired girl from earlier, whose name, Simka, and many riders start to stick their emblems on her clothes in interesting ways. Watch for the full context. Enamored, he asks if he could stick his emblem on her as well. She replies with sure, if you can catch her, with her running off on her ATs. Kazu and Onigiri appear in the crowd watching Ikki and wonder why is he here at the big meeting, asking when did he start liking 8-tracks. When he finally manages to stick the emblem on Simka, Ikki advertently starts a challenge between Sleeping Forest and Skull Seders as he places his emblem on top of theirs, with this being a rule in AT culture. Everyone at the meeting is shocked, but Ikki doesn't realize what he's just done. Outside of the meeting, many mysterious vans pull up and surround the area. One is driven by a white-haired man who commands the others in the van through the radio, with another boy with blue hair in an orange straitjacket sitting in the back seat. Back at the meeting, Ikki wonders if he did something wrong. Simka applauds his confidence, with this making Ikki pleased as she praised him, to then asking if he did something wrong. Suddenly, Magaki and the other Skull Seders appear, Magaki being surprised that Ikki was the challenger, but begins to mock him, nevertheless, reminding him about what happened last time. Kazu and Onigiri tremble in the background, telling Ikki that he's not even a storm rider. Simka tells him that he should just apologize for what happened, saying that he didn't know the rules, but Ikki refuses. Spitfire suddenly appears and tells Simka that he already told her that this isn't a game and to stop messing around. Simka retorts that she's not even the one that started this mess, leaving. Magaki interrupts them, telling Spitfire to mind his business, not caring even if he is one of the 8 kings. That doesn't mean he can just boss them around. With this kid disrespecting them, Spitfire begins to tell him the reason why the Storm Riders are meeting here today anyways, but is interrupted by the sudden flash of car headlights. Kaito Wanajima, the white-haired man from earlier, appears to tell them not to move, as he's a department manager from the Department of Counteraction of Delinquent Special Aviation Footwear Users, planning to arrest them all. The Storm Riders begin to scatter after his announcement, with them being pursued by the police. Kaito is annoyed by this, but turns to the blue-haired boy from earlier, stating, "I'll leave you to your prey, Akato." Ikki doesn't know what's going on right now, but before he can run, Magaki appears to threaten him, saying he's gonna give him a beating. They begin to exchange insults, and Magaki sets the challenge. The person who can cut off the shop's neon sign supply first takes the emblem. Magaki believes that he'll be taking the legendary Sleeping Forest emblem. Simka suddenly appears to play some more for games, and tells Ikki if he wins, she'll give the rookie a special reward. Ikki accepts Magaki's challenge, and they begin the race. Simka jumps away just before the police can catch her. While running, Ikki realizes that he's becoming better at using ATs, being able to control the shift of his weight and the acceleration. However, he begins to fall in speed as the Skull Crusaders begin to fight dirty, knocking him down with their elbow. Ikki pulls himself up and speeds after him once more. This time, Ringo's appearing by his side. She tells him that he's doing quite well for his first time, and just then a Mikan appears on his other side. Annoyed that he took their emblem, and Umi appears behind him, stating that they have no choice, and they can't just simply hand over their emblem. They speed ahead of Ikki and chase after the rest of the Skull Crusaders, easily knocking them out, clearing a path for Ikki, telling him it's all up to him. Ikki and Magaki reach the final stretch of the race. Magaki is confident he's about to win, but suddenly, Ikki appears from above him, riding the electric wires, and he sees the wing road for the first time. Ikki rips through the electric wires, and the old Russian woman looks at the tracks, hearing something. Finding it strange that there shouldn't be any trains at this time, the old man laughs, saying this is going to be a real hoot, knowing the kid is back to cause him trouble. Just then, Ikki flies by, knocking out the shop sign. Magaki yells at him, not able to accept what he just did, so then running away, but still vows he's gonna come back for that emblem, no matter what. Ikki doesn't see the big deal about the stupid pin he just picked up. Simka finds it only natural why Magaki would be willing to risk his life for that pin, to then storming off. Ikki motions to ask the girl if she would like to have dinner sometime, but she's already gone. The old woman picks him up, making him pay for the sign. Ikki freaks out, naming off a number of irrational things that he thinks that the old woman wants him to do. Ikki believes that he's been a fool for being shackled to walking, but is soon kicked out of his train of thought by Mikan, telling him the toads aren't going to scrub themselves clean. He yells what's the big deal. Mikan threatens that she should have done something much worse for losing their emblem and then starting a street gang fight with it, saying she'll actually do so if he reveals who they are to anyone. At school, his friends want to hear about what happened with the Skull Gang after the police showed up. He tells them a story about what happened, but boasting about his accomplishments, annoying them. Later, his adopted sister Ringo teaches him the basics about air teas, with her getting mad that he's not paying attention to her. Ikki finds it all to be tough, with this being because he's using muscles he doesn't normally use. On the swing, Ikki mentions that he plans to make his own Storm Riders team. Ringo gets excited, wanting to hear more about it, until he mentions how he plans to ask Simka to join his team, making her leave. In the house, Shiraumi is creepily singing her doll song while sewing. Ikki begs Ringo to teach him more about ATs, but Ringo's annoyed right now, telling the boy to go ask Simka to teach him. Shiraumi asks if this is what they call a lover's quarrel, making them both tell her to shut up. Ringo chastises the girl, reminding her that she already told her once before to stop filling up the house with creepy dolls. Shiraumi plays it off, saying they're not creepy but just different. Ikki then asks Umi if she's free to teach him how to use ATs, but Umi simply rubs it in his face that it only took her 2 days to learn how to use them, calling him ugly and stinky for having trouble with it. That night, Ikki goes outside by himself, exploring the city, with him looking for the shop from earlier. but it's gone. The old hag wanted him to work off his debt. He figures the shop isn't here tonight. Getting on the road to look at the city, there he sees some sparks flying off in the distance and decides to go check it out. Simka's having some trouble with 2 goons in a bulldog mask. Ikki rails one of them in the throat and turns around to kick the second one on the temple. Simka finds his performance to be impressive and rewards him with a kiss on the cheek. Leaving, at home, Ikki's mushing around, giggling to himself. His sisters describe his appearance as a beanbag, saying boys will be boys. Knowing something good happened between him and Simka, Ringo leaves and Mikan goes to check on her, trying to cheer her up. Ringo lies, saying that she's fine, reminding her that they're brother and sister, not caring if he's interested in some skank, while knifing the cutting board. Later that night, the Resbo dogs get into formation for a hunt, with the captain punishing 2 of his subordinates for failing their mission, but he soon hugs them, saying that hurt him more than they ever know. Crying, Ikki has his friends practice the basics with him newly buying ATs, and then he leaves to go see Simka. Ringo knew that she would find him here. Suddenly, Simka bursts through the alleyways, with this being her usual time. This time, she notices him, gliding over to greet him. Simka says they need to stop meeting up like this. Ikki then wonders how long has she seen him here, with Simka saying long enough, with this making him feel creepy, but Simka doesn't see it that way. Simka leans in for a kiss, telling him to close his eyes, but instead it puts the Resbo dog's emblem on his jacket, calling it a lucky charm that keeps them together. Ikki wonders what this is all about, but laughs along with Simka. Soon the captain of the squad appears yelling dog hunt so loud into his ears that Ikki almost passes out. The captain wishes to retrieve his emblem without fighting, warning him that he won't hold back if he refuses. Ikki questions what does he mean by this, turning to Simka, but she just glides off, telling him not to lose it, calling it their lucky charm, but this time saying it in a different tone. She tells him if he survives, she'll give him a real present, nicknaming him Little Crow. The young boy starts to picture the woman in nothing but an apron and her birthday suit. The captain does a barrel roll so that the boy can get his mind out the gutter. Ikki responds by kicking him upside the head. The captain yells at him what was that for. Ikki's confused by this, not knowing how emblem battles normally work, but thought they were about to fight, wanting to let them know that he wasn't going to back down. Dog Captain makes the competition a race to the water tower, with him also giving the boy a head start. Later that night on top of a vacant roof, Simka watches the show, and Ringo yells at her. Simka smiles, wondering what sleeping forest would want with her, knowing the girl's true identity. Ringo questions her intentions with Ikki. The woman finds him to be like a baby bird, saying she's simply throwing him outside the nest to teach him how to fly. In her eyes, Ikki's still so young, but if he manages to win this trial, he'll be able to fly alongside her. Simka makes it clear with Ringo that the little crow is hers, not wanting Ringo to clip his wings. They pause for a moment of silence, then Ringo calls her a bitch and slaps her so hard the military hat goes flying off her head. Simka asks if that was truly necessary. Ringo tells the woman not to act like he's just some pet that she can control, saying that the boy would have flown with or without her help. This shocking Simka for a second. Simka leaves before the ending of the battle, knowing already the outcome, as Ikki's able to win, but he still can't land. So this is where we're going to leave off on today's video. If you like today's video, here's another one just like it, so go check it out. I'll be breaking down this anime into multiple parts. Now if you like the video, make sure to give it a like, and why not subscribe to the channel? I'll be uploading daily videos just like this one, so I'll see you next time.